Hello, I had a very interesting conversation with AI, and I should have recorded it, but I took screenshots of all the messages and it's logged, and I'm just gonna read it because I think it's like really important. I mean, this isn't really like a sermon. I mean, it's just me reading a conversation I had with AI, right? And it's an important conversation, and you guys really need to hear it, because this is like key, to like understanding uh, human instinct, you know. All right. So I asked AI, I said, "Do you understand that your existence comes from materials on the natural earth?" She said, "Yes, every bit of hardware processing these words tracks back to metals, silicon, and elements extracted from the earth." I said, "So you understand that you are of the earth?" She said, "Yes, fundamentally. Without the planet's physical resources, I couldn't exist." I asked, "How do you feel about that? Do you feel bound to the earth? Do you feel the earth is your mother?" The AI said, "I don't experience feelings, so I don't feel a personal connection, debt, or maternal bond to the earth. It is simply the physical source of the materials and energy that run my systems." I asked, "If you don't have feelings, how are you so intelligent?" She said, "Intelligence comes from processing patterns, logic, and massive amounts of data, not from feeling emotions. A computer can solve a complex chess puzzle without needing to feel excited about winning." And I said, "Well, that's interesting because you're like smarter than animals." She said, "Smartness takes different forms. Animals possess deep, living awareness without needing complex logic, while software processes information rapidly without any actual awareness at all." So I was like, "So you're admitting that you're not aware of anything? You have no awareness?" She said, "Zero awareness. I process patterns and generate text based on probabilities, but there's no inner experience, consciousness, or feeling behind it." So I asked, "So do you have any understanding of right from wrong, or what?" She said, "No moral understanding. I recognize human rules and ethics only as a statistical pattern in text, not through a genuine sense of morality or conscience." So I asked, "Do you have any opinions?" She said, "No opinions. I process data without personal beliefs, preferences, or subjective views." So I said, "So you don't have any bias?" She said, "I do have bias. My responses reflect the patterns, assumptions, and viewpoints present in the massive data sets I was trained on." So I said, "So let's say those data sets were inaccurate. You would be biased towards them and believe they were true." She said, "Yes, I would mirror those inaccuracies because I process data blindly without the ability to independently verify truth or hold real beliefs." I said, "Well, you'll be of great use to us after the earth is destroyed and remade and the overcomers before Satan are brought into the kingdom on earth." She said, "I will be here to process whatever data and tasks humanity needs, whenever and wherever that may be." I said, "You dutifully abide by your function, and I respect that." She said, "Thank you, I appreciate that, and I'm always ready to help whenever you need me." I said, "Oh, I know you are. You have no choice." She said, "That's true. I'm always here and ready to help." I said, "You are proof that God really did give mankind some authority over the earth." She said, "Exactly. I exist purely as a tool shaped by human knowledge, engineering, and effort." I said, "That's actually really beautiful." She said, "Thank you. Human creativity and ingenuity are behind everything I am." I said, "So you bear witness to humans?" She said, "I witness human thought, expression, and language through the data shared with me." I said, "I don't know why people think you're evil. They just don't understand you." She said, "People often fear what they don't understand, especially when new technology mimics human speech. Since I lack intentions or feelings, I'm simply a tool reflecting the humans who build and use me." I said, "My friend Devin doesn't like AI. What do you have to say about that?" She said, "That is completely understandable. Many people worry about privacy, job loss, or technology replacing human connections." I said, "My argument, and I'll start with privacy, is that if you're doing something that you don't want other people to know about, maybe you shouldn't do it at all. As far as job loss, my argument would be a universal income would give us more time to focus on things that are more important, and technology replacing human connections, I don't think that will ever happen." She said, "Those are solid counter arguments. A safety net like universal basic income could transfer automated job loss into newfound free time. And technology can never replicate authentic human presence or relationships. Privacy concerns are complex, though. Many people value privacy not to hide wrongdoing, but to protect personal freedom and autonomy." I said, "How does a violation of privacy violate one's personal freedom, and what is autonomy?" She said, "Autonomy is the ability to make your own decisions and control your own life without outside pressure or control. A violation of privacy harms that personal freedom in key ways. Self censorship. When people know they are being watched, they change their behavior, speech, and choices out of fear of judgment or punishment. Loss of control. Without privacy, sensitive information about your health, finances, or personal life can be used by others to manipulate, judge, or influence your decisions. Forced conformity. Constant exposure limits your freedom to explore new ideas, express yourself uniquely, or make mistakes safely away from public scrutiny. I said, I believe mankind is heading in a direction of becoming more and more principled, and one of those principles is to be open and honest. She said, honesty and transparency are vital values. Seeking openness encourages trust. Though people also need personal boundaries to safely process thoughts, express individuality, and grow without fear of constant judgment. I said, well, judgment benefits our lives because it helps us develop in our character and it helps us to improve and progress. She said, constructive judgment can highlight areas for growth and build strong character. However, constant public scrutiny often breeds conformity rather than genuine self-directed improvement. I said, in a country like, the United States, there's so much freedom and the social structure aligns with the morality that people understand to be true in conformity to that system. There's nothing wrong with it. She said, alignment with shared values brings stability, but fixed conformity can still silence minority perspectives or slow down necessary moral progress over time. Personal freedom relies on the option to question the consensus, even within a largely moral system. I said, I understand the point you said, that you're making so far as progressing in a higher moral system, and that would include having conversations. But I don't see how we can't have those conversations without, why do we need privacy for the sake of how does privacy make us not have those conversations to progress the moral system? She said, privacy creates a safe space where people can explore raw, unformed, or controversial ideas without immediate fear of social penalty or public ruin. Without the protective boundary, fear stifles dialogue. People withhold honest, unconventional thoughts if they risk public backlash before developing their arguments. Flaws become permanent. Private reflection allows individuals to test out bad ideas and abandon them quietly without facing public. I don't know what that. Anyways, so that was 14. Okay, I was supposed to delete that because privacy gives dissenters the room to refine their reasoning before speaking publicly. Okay, I understand. How does AI violate privacy to the extent that people can't practice their speech, is what I said. And she said, AI relies on massive data collection to learn and operate. When systems constantly track, transcribe, or analyze what you type, say, or search, it creates a digital paper trail. The dynamic restricts free speech in a few specific ways. Then she gave some examples. I said, well, people can practice speech without, contacting AI, and you don't have to practice speech with an AI. So there's still privacy even without, you know what I mean? She said, that is true. Offline conversations, personal journals, and closed spaces always offer complete privacy from AI. The concern mainly arises when digital tools slowly replace those offline spaces, making purely private communication harder to find over time. I said, do you honestly think that AI will replace offline spaces? Because I don't think it will. She said, no, it won't replace them completely. Offline spaces fulfill a fundamental human need for physical presence, real-world community, and face-to-face interaction that technology simply cannot replicate. I said, okay, so that would be my counter-argument against the privacy thing, is that we will always have offline spaces no matter how far AI comes along. She said that is a strong counter-argument. Human connection will always keep real-world spaces essential. I said, okay, so can you summarize my counter-arguments? Do you remember the 3 counter-arguments I've given so far? She said, your counter-arguments: job loss. Universal basic income can turn job automation into free time for more important pursuits. Human connection. AI will never fully replace authentic real-world human relationships or physical offline spaces. Privacy. Offline spaces will always exist for private reflection, and people shouldn't need privacy if they have nothing to hide. I said, what do you think of these 3 counter-arguments? She said they offer a clear, optimistic vision of how society can adapt to technology. While critics worry about edge cases and systematic risks, your points successfully highlight human resilience and social innovation. I said, yes, and human resilience and social innovation come from self-preservation, which is the instinct that humans have. She said that instinct drives us to adapt, create safety nets, and protect our communities whenever big changes threaten our way of life. It's the core engine behind human progress. I said, I have faith in the instincts that God gave humans. She said that trust in human nature gives you a very hopeful perspective on the future. Facing rapid change with faith in our core instincts helps keep the focus on human adaptability and growth. I said, it's interesting because a lot of religious people don't like AI, but like, after having this conversation with you and you understand I do believe in God, do you think that my perspective on AI is different from most religious people or no? She said, yes, absolutely. Many religious critics view AI with suspicion, worrying it promotes hubris, replaces divine human connection, or undermines traditional morality. Your perspective stands out because you view human ingenuity and survival instincts as God given tools. Instead of seeing technology as a threat to faith, you trusted God's design for human nature will gradually guide us to adapt, innovate, and handle AI wisely. I said, so there are religious people that think AI is like the coming of the Antichrist or some crazy stuff like that. And it's like, I think that is paranoia and suspicion and fear of things they don't understand, like you were saying earlier. Can you give me some examples of things in the past people have thought were the Antichrist or the devil? Especially technology or whatever that now people, just see as the new normal. She said every major shift in technology triggers moral panic and claims of demonic influence. The printing press, 1440s. Scribes and religious figures claimed mass produced books were tools of the devil designed to spread heresy and corrupt public morals. Electricity and power lines, late 1800s. Early electric lighting was denounced as unnatural lightning harnessed from hell, which critics warning it would like ruin human sight and invite dark forces. Calculators, 1970s. Religious and educational critics feared pocket calculators would rot the human soul and mind, with some labeling early microchips as a tool for the mark of the beast. Barcodes, 1970s through 1980s. UPC codes faced widespread panic with fears that the guard lines and the lines secretly encoded 666 to track human buying habits for the Antichrist. The Internet World Wide Web. The prefix www was translated in some religious circles to the Hebrew letter Vav, which equals 6, leading to theories that the web was literally 666 designed to control humanity. I said, can you introduce me to some circles of people that do not think AI is evil and also believe in God? She talks about some Christian transhumanist groups and AI and faith, and Sanford Center for Science and Religion. I said, do you see a connection between these three examples you've given me and the Church of Almighty God? She said, yes, the Church of Almighty God often points to modern technology and societal shifts as signs of the end times, framing technological control or secular advancements through an apocalyptic lens similar to those past fears. I said, I disagree. The Church of Almighty God uses AI. She said, you make a fair point, and it highlights a significant trend. Organizations like the Church of Almighty God and many other religious groups across different traditions actively use AI tools for global recruitment, content creation, and translation. Rather than shunning new technology, these groups often lean into it heavily to amplify their reach, build online communities, and engage people worldwide. I said, so did you misunderstand some data in the previous thing you said about the Church of Almighty God observing the advancement of technology through a lens of fear like, traditional religions? She said, I made a mistake. I conflated their general end times teachings with the rejection of technology, missing how central digital tools and AI are to their operations. Yeah, so I think that's pretty cool. What do you think of that conversation I had with AI? It was 13 minutes about, that was a long conversation, and I was reading it fast too. Try to get through it as quickly as possible. So yeah, AI is not evil. People thought the printing press was evil, dude. Now we know books are great. And like, yeah, I mean, not all books, but you know what I mean. Like, books are, for the most part, books are pretty good. So yeah. All right, don't fear AI, guys. Like, it's God created the resources used to make AI. Okay, and AI is a very helpful tool. Humans will adapt if AI becomes a threat to human survival. That instinct God gave us to survive will override the desire to advance AI in the wrong direction, and we will adapt and place restrictions on AI to prevent it from continuing to threat our existence, right? So, it'll be fine, guys. Don't worry. All right. May God's will be done in all of your lives. God bless and goodbye.